All right, good evening, family. Thank you so much for coming back, joining us once again. And we're talking about the miracle of PPP. If you haven't had a chance, please go back and watch the 6 a.m. because to get tonight's part, you gotta get 6 a.m. And so I'll just do a quick recap. But what we talked about is, what do you do when your dream, the dream that God has put on your heart, the dream that God has birthed, that is birthing inside of you, what do you do when that dream gets you thrown into a pit? And then from there, not only are you thrown into a pit, you get thrown into prison. And what we talked about was, we're talking about the life of Joseph. God had given Joseph a dream, and he was sharing this dream with the people that he loved the most. Like, why not talk about your dream and say, hey, God has given me a dream for my life. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but this is what I've been dreaming about. And what do you do when your family members, they don't understand you? They misunderstand you. They misjudge you. They get jealous. They get upset. And Joseph's brothers end up throwing him into a pit. And after he lands into a pit, he ends up getting sold to some Midianite merchants. And then he'll be going to Egypt, and he works for Potiphar. And then working for Potiphar eventually gets him thrown into prison, falsely accused of sleeping with Potiphar's wife. And that's not true. And then he's going to spend 2 years in prison. I mean, come on, by this time you're thinking, God, maybe that dream that I have isn't real. Maybe that dream wasn't from you, right? We can begin to think, we can begin to kind of struggle through that process. And Joseph was 17 years old. And when he's thrown right into the pit, and then from the pit, can you imagine your 17-year-old self getting sold out basically by your own family? You're thrown into a pit, and then from the pit you go to work in a different land, not your own people. You're working in Egypt, you're working for Potiphar, and then you're falsely accused, and then you get thrown into prison. And what we talked about was, hey, that these are all stepping stones, that God uses these tough moments in life to say, hey, I'm gonna bring a miracle through this. I know it doesn't look like it. I know it absolutely doesn't feel like it. And you're beginning to wonder, God, where are you? He understands. He's saying, yeah, I know life puts us through these moments, and loved ones, people who loved us and love us, they can hurt us the most. And sometimes we're betrayed by people that we work with or work for. But God wants us to know that, hey, Joseph, you're closer now to the palace than you've ever been before. That you were in a pit, but the pit got you to prison, and the prison is just a setup to get you into the palace. That you're closer, that in prison, it may not look like it, it may not feel like it, but in prison, you're closer to the palace than you were before when you were with your brothers and living with your family. And I'm working it all together for good. So Joseph's in prison, and God has given him the gift of interpreting dreams. And one of the guys that was there with him in prison, he had a dream and he didn't understand it. And Joseph gave him the interpretation of that dream. So he gets out of prison, and he goes back to Egypt to work with Pharaoh, to work for Pharaoh. And Joseph said, hey, when you're there, don't forget about me, right? Like, remember me. Well, 2 years are going to pass. Finally, this man remembers, because Pharaoh has a dream and he needs an interpretation. And this man says, hey, I met a guy in prison, Joseph, and he's got a gift. God's given him the gift. He'll read your dream. He'll interpret your dream. And sure enough, that's what gets him out of prison. And now he's working in Egypt, second in command to Pharaoh. My goodness gracious, right? The miracle of PPP, the miracle of the pit, the prison, and now he's in the palace because God was working all things together for good. That even though it looked like a terrible situation, it wouldn't be, though, until about 30 years old that Joseph gets to the palace. So can you imagine, from 17 to the age of 30? What is that for those who do math? What is that, 13 years? 13 years of the struggle, 13 years of living life, 13 years of wondering, what does the dream mean? 13 years of questioning, God, are you really with me? But by the time he gets to the palace, he knows without a doubt God is with him. And long story short, he's reunited with his brothers, and there's some drama there, so you got to go back and read it. But basically what Joseph tells his brothers is, hey, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Yeah, you tried to throw me into the pit and you wanted me out. But God took even the evil that you meant, even the evil that is thrown our way, even the evil that people put us in the places that we don't want to be. We're thrown into pit-like situations. We're thrown into the prison-like situations. But even through all of that, God says, what they meant for evil, I'm working it together for your good. Because with God, there's no such thing as failure, loss, impossibility, or defeat. So family, just be faithful to God because God is faithful to you. And when those times come, when we're going through those moments where we feel like giving up on the dream that God has given us, remember, God is working it all out and he will bring it to pass. What matters is, how do we handle ourselves in the situations when we're thrown into the pit? What are the choices that we make when we're thrown into prison? Because how we respond in pit-like situations, how we respond in prison-like situations, it matters. It makes all the difference. And God doesn't want us to give up. God doesn't want us to lose sight of the dream that he's placed in us. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Elder Joseph is going to lead us out for tomorrow's Miracles in October.